But let's go ahead and start where all good defenses seem to start, and that is up front with those defensive line questions. Probably go 8 to 10 minutes on this, I would think. We will cut all these into individual videos as well on YouTube if you want to watch those separately, or you can watch the long one, and we'll put chapters on it as well. So let's just go with the questions. If we want to try to answer them, if we disagree on if it's even a question or not, let's just have fun with this thing. Here's a question for you. How much pass rush and edge setting can FSU get from Jared Verse and Derrick Mclendon and Quayshon Fuller? And I'll throw this in there, Dennis Briggs.
Yeah. I think Verse is a great pickup. I think Verse is gonna make like big explosive plays and then maybe suffer to give you some consistency that you've otherwise had the position. Now, I'm not comparing him to Johnson. I've said for a long time that if you make comparisons of anybody to Jermaine, you're probably going to be disappointed. But I do think that Verse is a great get. I'm not belittling that at all. But I think he's a guy who's going to create a strip sack for you one moment and then probably be pretty well handled, blocked on the next. I think the moments from him are going to be big, explosive, notable. I don't know that he'll bring the consistency to the position. And I only bring that up because everybody knows that, Jermaine turned Miami's tackle into a spin cycle, and the game that he had against Notre Dame and the play against Clemson is one of the more impressive things that you've seen. But the consistency that guy gave you and his ability to set the edge and run, I don't know that it's as appreciated by the fan base as it should be. And that's going to be a really, really tough part of his game to replace, other than just the obvious kind of jaw-dropping shock plays that he gave you from time to time throughout the course of the season.
Yeah, 100%. He didn't allow a lot of negative plays. You know what I mean? Even when he wasn't getting there, he wasn't like sacrificing his discipline and getting out of position too often. That could be tough to replace. Now, I threw in Dennis Briggs there because I am curious, how much three-man front will FSU play this fall? How much will the pass rush drop off without Jermaine without Jermaine Johnson and without Kier Thomas? Can you afford to play Dennis Briggs more at that end spot, whether that's as a 5-tech, 6-tech, or 7-tech? To me, those are really important questions for the success of this defense, and maybe we will start to see those guys answer some of those questions this spring.
Bold prediction, bud.
Yeah.
Dennis Briggs is the best defensive end you have on this roster.
Ooh, that is bold. Yeah. I kind of like it, though. I can see that.
And I think we'll have, again, I don't think he makes the splash plays. Maybe it's a good combination pairing him and Verse together. I think he'll do really well in some aspects of the run game that we talked about, but also really good athlete. Obviously had the injury last year. I think he recovers. I think he shapes his body slightly. And I think by the time you come to Duquesne and LSU, that he may be the best defensive end that you have on the roster.
Thinking back on his career, right? Highly touted out of Kissimmee Osceola. He didn't play part of the 2020 season due to COVID, right? Not him having COVID, like legitimate. When we didn't know as much about COVID, he decided to kind of opt out for part of the season, and then ended up playing a little bit of that season, if I recall. Then last year, he gets that chop block early on in the year. Recovery's kind of slow, comes back and gives them some positive minutes down the stretch, or positive snaps, not minutes. We're not in basketball anymore, thank God. That team. Speaking of injuries and just poor basketball team.
Ever since we talked about what a great run they had, not a great year, but it's only gone in the wrong direction. But this is the defensive preview, and we'll stick with it.
How if one of the young guys on the defensive line for this team at defensive end is able to step up, will we see those signs in spring? Will we see one of those guys start to emerge, whether that is Wilson or Peyton or one of those dudes that you got in that 2021 signing class? Or are they more of a 2023 year impact? That sort of redshirt sophomore impact.
Even if they are only a 2023 impact, normally normally you can start to get the feel in spring for if guys are going to make an impact. It may still be a ways away, but you start to see flashes. You start to see signs that, hey, this guy's picking it up. It may be a little while until he's fully operational, but the surface is kind of being scratched there, and development is taking place. So I think we'll get a pretty good feel as to where these guys are, and ultimately, again, we're not going to make too much out of one spring, and but I do think that for some of these younger, kind of stringier, leaner defensive ends, that if the development cycle is going to take place, for them to be there, that you at least start to see flashes of it during spring, and you realize that the guys may still need another 14, 16 months and in the weight room and on the whey protein and everything else, wink, wink, nod, nod. But you start to see that there's a ball player there and a guy that contribute along the line of scrimmage for you.
I can agree with that. Here's a question for you. Lundy and Gaynor, how much do they end up playing maybe at that Fox role, sort of that, stand-up hybrid role, not a true off-ball backer spot, little rush, little cover, wide side of the field type role?
All right. I know that there's always been an interest in people in trying to get Gaynor to catch on at Fox, and I certainly understand it. I've never seen it, and I'm not knocking the kid here, but I've never seen the kid really be in love with the idea of playing that close to the ball. Most of the time when Gaynor makes splash plays, he's distanced from the ball. He has a chance to read the play, react to it, and maybe the immediate football instincts aren't there. And I'm not knocking the kid, just reflective of what I've seen from his game. I do think that Lundy has a decent chance. I mean, is certainly the body types there, fluid enough for that position. Certainly, if you could ask him to do some of the things that you did at linebacker, I think that's an ideal fit that hopefully he kind of grows into and is able to play. I like him, hard worker, but absent a total reshaping of his body and flexibility in his hips that I haven't otherwise seen. There's only so many snaps that you can give that guy at linebacker and not be totally concerned with what you're otherwise giving up. So I would love to see him catch on at Fox. And I realize Fox is a type of linebacker, and I'm talking more in a traditional sense there. I would love to see him catch on, play a little closer to the line of scrimmage, and be somebody that can give you a little bit of flexibility in what you ask him, and give you some pass rush as well.
Yeah, I can see that. How about inside? So I feel really, really good about a trio. That's not even a question, right? Cooper, Lovett, and Briggs. But let me ask you this. If you want to play Briggs more on the outside, do you have to have some which young guy is going to step up on the inside to give you, I don't know, let's say 300. I don't want to give away all my strategy for the for the snap count auction here that we'll do come fall. How many guys, who has to step up on the inside? And do you think we'll see it this spring in order to allow Briggs to play more outside?
I do. I'm pretty optimistic here. Obviously, the first two guys are maybe as comfortable at any position group that you have on this roster of starters. Maybe I'm getting over my skis here. Is a cliche I'm fond of using, but man, I think Ray, Malcolm is really had a solid year for you last year, and a guy that is on the verge of really emerging as kind of that third defensive tackle, and a guy that will hopefully give you the flexibility to play. Jarrett Jackson is always somebody that we said we thought would be boom or bust. I will give the staff credit, and that they've done a pretty good job of managing that kid and developing him. And we're, from friends of ours and sources placed within the Louisville program, know that at least at a time wasn't always the easiest thing to do. So I think they've done a good job with Jackson, keeping him there, developing him. But I think Malcolm Ray, for me, is the guy that is probably the most likely to step into that third defensive tackle spot, and really liked at times what you saw from Ray last year.
For sure. That makes sense. Josh Farmer is another interesting guy too, who I thought had a lot of potential as a recruit. Maybe he's able to give you some good minutes or snaps off the bench. Jarrett Jackson is another guy who was highly rated by some services, a little bit less highly by some. I thought it had some potential. How far off is he? Like, is he a guy that is going to show this spring that he can give you valuable snaps come the fall, or is he more of a 2023 type guy? In general, I am very concerned about this position in the coming years, and less so about it this year. But I think you're almost certainly going to lose Levitt and Cooper following the year, and so I would like to see this spring. Maybe you see some positive signs. Make me feel a little better about this position, right? And then finally, the last one for the defensive line. At this point, I expect that FSU will try to add another body for the edge, meaning more of a pass rusher type, not a 5-tech, 6-tech type. Will I still feel that way at the end of spring? Do you feel that way now?
I do think spring will give us a little bit of an idea as to where they feel they are with this position, but I do think that this is one of the areas that gets added to in the portal if they can grab somebody that they feel confident / comfortable with. A little bit of a hole here for an immediate player, a guy that can be a little bit of a bridge, and a guy that you can, like you referenced there, absolutely talk about. Not guaranteed starter minutes next year, but pretty close to it. If he comes in, it's a good fit. Can move immediately into a defense that's going to have opportunities galore next year. And I think Florida State will look to add a piece that fits that kind of general description after spring.